preparation. This is the process of removal of diseased and or healthy enamel and dentine and cementum to shape a tooth to receive a restoration. The objectives are the reduction of the tooth in miniature to provide retainer support, preservation of healthy tooth structure to secure resistance form, provision for acceptable finished lines, performing eggshell tooth reduction to encourage favorable tissue response. Schillingberg has given 5 principles of tooth preparation, which are preservation of tooth structure, retention and resistance, structural durability, of the periodontium. Rosenstiel has given a Wayne's diagram which includes the biologic, mechanical and the aesthetic factors. So as you know, the biological factors are those which will be affecting the health of the tissues. When we talk about mechanical, it is more related to the integrity of the prosthesis, as well as aesthetic deals more with the appearance of the patient. So only when these 3 factors would be met can we achieve an optimal preparation. So coming to the first principle, which is preservation of tooth structure. So as you all know, this is our main goal. That means even though our aim is to replace the lost tooth structure, but that means we should preserve what is remaining. This can be done by use of partial coverage restorations rather than complete coverage restorations wherever possible. Also, wherever possible, the margins of a preparation should be supragingival. Now, I agree, this cannot be the situation in all cases. Like even if suppose we have an aesthetic zone, we cannot afford to give a supragingival preparation. Also, whenever we are preparing the tooth, let us always remember that this is an irreversible procedure, and what we are dealing with is the living tooth structure. So we need to protect the adjacent tooth, we need to protect the soft tissues as well as the pulp. So when doing the tooth preparation, we need to use coolants. We need to protect our adjacent tooth by being careful when we are breaking the proximal contacts, by using the proximal tooth structure of the tooth being prepared to break the contacts. Also, whenever we are preparing, like suppose the mandibular lingual surfaces, we need to protect the tongue, the tissues. We can do that by retracting with a mouth mirror. So in these ways, we are supposed to protect not only the particular tooth which we are preparing, that means we need not be preparing more than required. We should not over-reduce a tooth. We need to prepare a tooth to a particular dimension to receive the restoration which has been planned for that particular situation. The next principle is retention and resistance. As you all know, retention is the ability of a preparation to prevent removal of the restoration along its path of insertion. And resistance is the ability of the preparation to prevent dislodgement of the restoration by forces directed in oblique, apical or horizontal direction. And retention and resistance are both interrelated. As you can see, whenever we are giving an extracoronal restoration, there is the use of the external surfaces of the tooth to obtain retention. Likewise, when we are using an intracoronal restoration, there is use of the internal walls of the tooth for retention. We also need to give some amount of taper to our tooth structure so that the restoration stays in place. Ideally, we should have parallel walls, but parallel walls are almost difficult to prepare. So, a minimal amount of taper, that is 3 degrees on each of the axial walls, is sufficient to retain our prosthesis in place. And the literature has reported that when the degree of taper increases, the retention comes down. Also, students, as you know, the more the surface area, the better the retention. So if you see in this particular situation and you compare both, so obviously the retention which is going to be obtained on a molar will be more than that on a premolar because of the surface area which is involved. Also, we have the concept of freedom of displacement. That is, for a restoration to stay in place, it should have a single path of withdrawal. It should not have multiple paths of withdrawal. The length of the tooth being prepared also has a role. So if you have a preparation with the longer walls, that will afford more retention compared to a preparation with the shorter walls. So this preparation with the longer walls will be better able to resist the displacement forces. Also, grooves can be added if you have a short preparation to increase the resistance of the restoration to displacement. Coming to the next principle, which is structural durability. Now, our restoration should have a sufficient bulk to stay in place. And for this, we need to perform reduction. That means when we perform occlusal reduction, that should be according to the material being used for the final restoration. So in case we are using metal, the reduction should be 1.5 millimeter on the functional cusp and 1 mm on the non-functional cusp. In this, the functional cusp is the palatal cusps in the maxillary arch and the buccal cusps for the mandibular arch. When we move on to a metal ceramic crown, the amount of reduction increases to provide additional space for the material. So in this case, the reduction would be 1.5 to 2 millimeters on the functional cusp and 1 to 1.5 millimeter on the non-functional cusp. When we go on to provide an all-ceramic restoration to our patients, the amount of occlusal clearance should be 2 mm. Also, the occlusal reduction should follow the normal anatomic contours of the tooth. Because remember, our aim is to create a miniature tooth, but it should look like the tooth which is prepared. So that means we should not go on to just flatten the occlusal surface. The anatomy of the tooth needs to be maintained, because if we do not do so, we may tend to overshorten our preparation. And in doing all this, we are compromising again with the retention and the resistance. Functional cusp bevel is also an integral part of occlusal preparation. So the functional cusp bevel is provided at a 45-degree angulation on the lingual inclines of the maxillary lingual cusps and on the buccal inclines of the mandibular buccal cusps. So this will again allow more amount of material, more amount of stresses to be directed towards the long axis of the teeth. So our basic aim is a better distribution of forces so that they are directed along the long axis of the abutment teeth. Then when we are doing axial reduction, the crown should duplicate the contours and profiles of the original tooth. Remember, if we do not do this, we may land up over contouring. Once we do this, that is going to compromise not only the aesthetics but also the periodontal health of the surrounding tissues. Marginal integrity is another important principle, and as the name suggests, the integrity of the margins play an important role in the success of the restoration. So, when possible, the margin should be supragingival. So, supragingival margin has got advantages both for the operator as well as for the patient. For a dentist, it is easy to visualize, it is easy to capture in the impressions, and also it is easy to evaluate when the patient comes at the time of follow-up. But we cannot give this in all situations. At times, we may opt for equigingival margins or subgingival margins. So, in situations where there is an existing restoration or there is some caries which is extending, we may prefer to have the margins which are subgingival. That means in some situations where you even want to increase the length of the particular tooth structure because you feel that the amount of tooth which is available to you is less. So we may tend to take the margins somewhat subgingivally so that we can get a better amount of tooth structure to provide retention and resistance. There are other margins also which are like the feather edge margin, which is though not recommended now. It conserves a lot of tooth structure, but it does not provide sufficient bulk. Also the chisel edge, which is conservative of the tooth structure, but the location of the margin is difficult to locate and thus producing over contouring. Therefore, it is indicated only in case of tilted teeth. Then we have the chamfer finish line, which provides a distinct margin and adequate bulk. But if it is not prepared, it could lead to an unsupported lip of enamel. So, chamfer finish line is indicated whenever we are going for cast metal restorations or lingual margins of metal ceramic crowns. So, we use a torpedo diamond or we use a round and tapered burr to provide this finish line. Then we have the shoulder finish line, which is approximately 1 to 1.2 to 1.5 mm in width. The advantages being the bulk of material, the disadvantages being less conservative. So wherever we are preparing the facial margins for a metal ceramic crown or an all ceramic crown, we want more amount of the restorative material. In those situations, we would prefer to use a shoulder finish line. A sloping shoulder also provides a bulk of material, reduces the unsupported enamel, it is less conservative, and it is also used in the facial margins of metal ceramic crowns. The last principle of tooth preparation is preservation of the periodontium. So the placement of these finish lines plays an important role in the success of our restoration. And whenever possible, the finish line should be placed in an area where the margins of the restoration can be finished by the dentist and cleaned by the patient. Because even though the dentist is doing his part, even the maintenance of the oral hygiene is also a part being played by the patient.